Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to give everyone just a couple minutes here to get logged in. I see some people are joining us right now. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on account-based marketing. We're going to be talking about today why you need great data in order to have a successful account-based marketing strategy.
Well, I think Malap and I could probably talk, Bridget, for about 5 days on data. He and I have been working on data for close to 10 years, and yeah, we have a lot of data stories. So I'm excited about this webinar because I think that the content is just so spot on for today's marketing environment.
Absolutely. All right, it looks like we got a good group here. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Just a couple housekeeping things first. We are recording this webinar. We will send that out as well as the slides right after this, so you can watch it again, send it to colleagues, whatever you think. So no need to take tons of notes. We'll send it out to you so you have it right there afterwards. So to get started, first, our speakers today, we have Marge Murphy. Marge is the president of Acadia. A couple highlights about Acadia. Acadia is a B2B lead generation company in Dayton, Ohio. We're focused in the industrial and manufacturing space. We look at sales and marketing alignment, digital marketing, and sales pipeline management. Marge is very experienced, has been doing this, founded Acadia about 21 years ago now. So very experienced and great person to have on the webinar. Then we also have Malap, who is the founder of NextSales. NextSales is a lead data management company with 150 plus people around the world and headquartered in California. They have a cloud product called Right Leads that enables the vision of account-based marketing and data. They also focus in technology, big data, human research, campaign execution, and program management. So obviously 2 very expert speakers on our webinar today. So without further ado, I am going to hand it off to them to get started.
Thanks so much, Bridget. I really appreciate it. Hey, while I'm doing my presentation, just for bandwidth purposes, I am going to go ahead and go off video, guys. But Malap, you know what? I'm going to stay on video today. We're going to play this one because Malap, you and I have a lot of give and take and back and forth when it comes to account-based marketing and the passion we have for it. So I'm going to keep myself on video today. So the real definition of account-based marketing. It is a focused strategy in which marketing and sales are collaborating to create personalized buying experiences for a mutually identified set of high-valued accounts. Guys, in all honesty, this is like personalized marketing on steroids. I think we really understand it in the B2C world or the business to consumer world. We'll walk into a store, we have some kind of an ID number, for us here in Ohio, you go into Kroger's and then 2 days later, you get a coupon for whatever you bought at the grocery store last week. That's really personalized marketing. And account-based marketing is very much the same, but that's in the B2B space. And it's really time now. Account-based marketing isn't new, but it's time now that the B2B space really embraces account-based marketing. So quickly, let's go over what is the difference between traditional marketing and account-based marketing. So traditional marketing, B2B marketing process starts with a broad, untargeted approach to capture and communicate with as many potential new customers as possible. That is the traditional method of marketing in the B2B world. We're going to turn that upside down and take a look at it differently. Account-based marketing is about identifying and targeting best fit customers because broad-based model is no longer working as effectively as this new account-based marketing is working. And it's been proven. Actually, Serious Decisions did a study several years ago, and 92% of B2B marketers said ABM was extremely important to their strategy moving on. So we're starting to recognize in the world where there are hundreds and thousands of messages coming at us each day. And I'll pull a stat from a webinar I did earlier this week. In 1970, people were receiving anywhere between 600 to 1,200 marketing messages a day. In 2020, that number has gone from 6,000 to 12,000 marketing messages on average per day. So the lesson here is that we can't have this broad spray. We have to focus on the targets and the people within those target organizations who we want to get to and we want to be very specific with. Really, really an amazing statistic when I think about it. So what are the steps to ABM in a very general way? There are several. We're going to break these down into 4 pretty simple steps. Number 1 is identifying your targets. That's defining and building the target accounts you're going after, and more importantly, understanding the key stakeholders that you have to be engaging with. Now that's really going to be our focus for today with Malap. That's his area of expertise. But the other steps remaining for ABM is then to create relevant content. Once you understand the stakeholders, and you're going to have multiple stakeholders in any one organization, you have to create content that's relevant to them. You're not going to speak to an engineer the same way you're going to speak to a procurement person. We've got different personas, different messages, so that content is going to be extremely important. The next thing we're going to do is align sales and marketing to deliver the messaging. Marketing is going to produce good content. Sales has to understand how people are consuming that content, so when they have an engagement over the phone or an email exchange, they clearly understand what that person is interested in and is looking to achieve. No longer do we have these sales and marketing silos. They have to be an integral piece of the messaging together. And then finally, we're going to continue to measure and fine tune. Today, there is no excuse for not having analytics. There are so many tools out there to help you understand how people are engaging with your content. We've got Google Analytics. There are free tools that are offered by HubSpot and a multitude of other marketing automation companies and sales automation companies. There's no excuse now not to embrace the technology required to measure and analyze. That's the only way you're going to continue to refine your campaigns and maximize the sales engagements. So focusing on data, let's ask a really quick question here before we jump out. Are any of you on the phone right now using account-based marketing at your company? And you know, you might not totally be doing it, but you're dabbling with it. So if you could just enter your answers in the poll, that would be great.
I answered yes. Excellent.
Okay, so we've got, about 54% are saying yes and 46% are saying somewhat. So this is really relevant information for everybody on the phone here, because it's something we've got to really be focusing on, especially in the world of post-COVID, but I won't even go into that. We'll stay out of COVID for today. We'll keep it upbeat. So thinking about, okay, slide, let's go.
So Marge, I'm just gonna sort of jump in here for
Sure.
The fact that we're now kind of about to start diving into how account-based marketing really relies to a large extent on data. And a lot of the stuff really that we're going to be talking about today from a next sales perspective is that we've really had an opportunity to learn from practitioners, to learn from our clients, to learn from partners like yourself, Marge. Delighted to be on this webinar with you. Very exciting. And what we've learned is that you can really shape outcomes so long as you get a good foundational strategy going with respect to data, which, as we know, is not only dynamic, but also requires to change in line with different and varying business conditions. And so I'm fortunate to be a part of Team Next Sales, where we've really developed a lead data management platform called Right Leads, which combines a lot of these learnings from being a part of successful demand gen campaigns over these last 12 or 13 years. And we're able to pack and bundle together different competencies now as we look back and connect the dots. So there's data science, there's software engineering, there's a lot of data research that goes into getting data right. And of course, there's that art and science that is called as campaign management. And when we sort of bundle all of that together, as Mark said, you start looking at identifying your targets. You start looking at getting your data strategy sorted out to tee things off on the right note from a implementation of ABM perspective. So looking forward to talk about that in some more detail. And Marge, I know that the data puzzle does indeed puzzle many. So perhaps you can comment about your war stories from the data puzzle labyrinth, so to speak.
Oh yeah, starting as a lead generation organization, 20 plus years ago, it was all about generating leads. And let's face it, Malap, everything we're even talking about today, at the end of the day, everybody wants to generate more revenue. Everybody wants to generate more leads. But when I look back at all the data that we have, the most frustrating thing has been bad data and lack of ability to get to people. And the fact that we're searching for people, the people that are on the phone doing outbound calling, inside sales reps, sales development reps, BDRs, whatever your nomenclature is for them, it is, I've measured it over and over again, and I can say statistically, Salesforce has a statistic that says 64.8% of a sales rep's time is spent looking for good data, not doing the job they were hired to do, which is engaging people on the phone, sending emails, nurturing that relationship. So data can be the logjam that really creates inefficiencies from the very first step of lead generation and demand generation. So we've really got to nail this down. And Malap, I hope we have some time at the end of this series here, because I'd really like for you to give a little bit better explanation about right leads and how you take data and on a regular basis, you are refreshing that for your clients. You're aggregating data from all different sources that they might have. So when a sales rep goes in and looks for the right contact, they are guaranteed that that person's name, phone number, email is accurate, and they're ready for the reach out. And that's the magic of right leads, to be honest with you. I think it's fantastic. And that is
right,
a
Martin.
critical point for nailing the data puzzle. So with that said, what have you found, Malap, with regards to the amount of money or the intensity that people are putting into data today?
Well, I think the same company, Salesforce, has another remarkable stat around this, right? And they're reporting that US businesses are losing close to $700 billion each year just because of the bad CRM data problem. And that's, when you sit back and think about that, that's about 30% of the annual revenues of the average company lost because of the data problem. So it is a big problem, no mistaking it. And from the various engagements that we've done in this space over the years, we realized that there are many, many benefits to getting this thing, to getting the data puzzle right. You have a lot of resources being freed up from SDRs. Let's face it, sales and marketing folks have a tough time. They have their work cut out for them. They got to figure out the messaging. They got to figure out how they're going to engage. And they're going to have to figure out how to move the deal along the pipeline. The last thing they need is the additional wrestling, if you will, with data problems. And yet it is so endemic that we've learned the hard way in some cases that you ignore data at your own peril. So how do we begin to nail down that data puzzle? And really, we're going to talk about 4 things here today, just 4 very simple steps that we found time and time again can help you stay on track. What are those 4 steps? Number 1, you got to bring your lead data together. And we're going to do a deep dive into that. But the idea is to have one unified view of your lead data across the organization, no matter what silo or individual or group might be the owner of that specific silo. Step number 2, you got to be able to size and build your TAM, or your total addressable market. Now, that's often easier said than done. TAM is the foundation stone for any marketing strategy, for most corporate strategies, and yet the ability to nail it down and stay with it in a dynamic business environment is something that does require some rigor and some focus. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Step number 3, you've got to cleanse your CRM data. And cleansing is not a do it once and forget about it kind of a problem. Bad data and the decay of data is everywhere. The Direct Marketing Association of America actually talks about the fact that data decays practically at close to 33% each year. In other words, if you don't bother to clean the data within your CRM, it could very well be completely obsolete in 3 years' time. And so you got to stay on top of continually fixing that problem. And lastly, we're going to be talking about fine-tuning and optimizing the data. and making sure that we're continually learning, that we're generating the kinds of insights that allow us to stay on top of the game. So those are the 4 steps, if you will, of the data puzzle. And March, I'm hoping that we can sort of spend a couple minutes talking through each of these.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when we talk about bringing lead data together, there's a scenario that comes to my mind, Malap, and your team and my team worked on this client for probably 6 or close to 7 years. And it was a large enterprise organization, and they had such a variety of CRM setup and what have you, that they had data silos everywhere. And of course, it was everything from an Excel spreadsheet in somebody's computer to some Salesforce data that they were pulling to something they were pulling out of their marketing automation system. And I think every time we cleansed data and gave it back to them, it would go into one part of their data collection, but it wouldn't go into another, and it would never make it into somebody's spreadsheet. So we kept finding, and they kept finding, that this was just a revolving door of cleaning data. And the answer to it is you have to bring it all into one place. There has to be one central point of truth from which you're cleansing data, and your demand generation people and your marketing generation people should be going to that one point of truth to gather the collection of people they need to be targeting, and then using that. And if anything comes back, it needs to be cleansed, it needs to be recycled through again. But until you decide you are not going to have disparate databases, you're going to have this chronic problem of unclean data. That was a biggie.
And it remains a biggie. Look, I mean, the modern sales and marketing shop is a complicated place, right? You got CRM systems, you got marketing automation systems, and email campaign management systems. Very often and increasingly these days, we see sales enablement tools increasingly finding a lot of resonance within the marketplace. Then you've got all kinds of data, and it's an understatement to say that we live in a data age. Think about the access to data that we have today. Organizations are buying and subscribing to online data sets. B2B organizations are in a big way investing in account technology installations and going after those. This is particularly true of the high-tech world. Then you have everybody's favorite talking point these days, the intent data, buyer signals that emanate from a host of different properties across the internet and social media, and that you might want to act upon in a timely way so that you can sort of respond to them. And then you have the individual worker bees, the event lists, the marketing analysts who's kind of trying to put together a roadshow for a particular part or region, a sales development rep who's industrious enough to put together, lists of various personas that he or she feels are ideal and required for his specific goals for that quarter or that month. When you think about the complexity of all of this, it's very easy to get lost. And one of the things that organizations are learning they have to do is to get really good at just bringing all that lead data together. So how do they go about doing this? Again, at a very high level, this is not meant to be a very technical webinar. So of course, we can have a follow-on about that, if this audience so chooses. But, you unify your lead data across the silos that tend to exist in the organizations. Mm-hmm. There is a significant amount of effort required with deduplicating this information as well. When you think about the fact that leads can emanate from different and diverse sources, you also have to live with the fact that you are going to end up with duplications. What compounds the problem is you also have to figure out how you're going to route those leads across your SDRs, your BDRs, your organization, so that the right touch points can happen, excuse me, at the right time in the buyer cycle. Then there is the problem of standardizing account level data and contact level data. What I might define as high tech as an industry, Marge might call the software industry. And Bridget here might choose to kind of classify that as the computer industry. How do we make sure that the data as it enters our systems you standardize enough so that you can then perform the elementary segmentation that all marketers need to do to get on with their jobs. And lastly, because we live in an ecosystem of so many different vendors, all of which or some of which at a point in time could add so much value to your own nuanced messaging when it comes to ABM, is you have to accept the reality that you're going to have to deal with third-party data vendors and increasingly manage them in such a way that you can continue to get one unified view of all the lead data sources and bring out the best in every lead data source that you have. So to summarize, bringing all the lead data together is step number one when it comes to executing your ABM data strategy.
Absolutely. And if we don't do that, the whole idea of account-based marketing doesn't work, because again, it's about personalization, and the buyer today wants to be approached with what their needs are, and that segmentation and that clean data is just the foundation for it all. But to the next point, the total addressable market, this is a good one. So Malap, I'm gonna throw out this story again. This was a recent one that your team worked with us over here at Acadia. We had a client who approached us and they said, we think our total addressable market is going to be thousands of people. And we said, well, let's work on that. So we worked with your team, and based on the criteria that they gave us, we said, okay, that's probably going to be somewhere around 3,000 target accounts for you. And they said, okay, 3,000, but we're thinking about this again, and here's a couple other pieces of criteria. Yes, we're looking for companies under $1 million, and we're looking that they use Shopify. But we don't only want to deal with products in certain areas, and we only want to deal with people in Canada and the United States. And no, they have to be products that are small enough to fit in a box this size. So as you can imagine, we started out with this universe. And as your team and my team started doing this research, and we started throwing people out of that universe, at the end of the day, there were 99 targets. So we started with 2,500 and we ended up with 99. So when you're looking at your total addressable market and you're going out there and maybe you're doing some, I don't know, census.gov data or whatever, those are very, very, very broad brush numbers. So you really have to specify who is your target audience. And I'm guaranteeing you it's going to be a fraction of what you thought it was. But, that's one example of what we found in the past. But Malak, you guys do this all day, every day. So go ahead, and why don't you give us a few more tidbits on this one.
Marge, I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said, because the ramifications of getting it an order of magnitude wrong are pretty significant. This cascades all the way up to the top, where business leaders do have to shoulder this responsibility of guiding the organization, guiding their investors, deciding on revenue goals and growth goals and budgets. And really, if you think about it, your total addressable market is 101. That's where you begin your journey. Mm-hmm. Serious practitioners will sort of always remind us, though, that building your TAM can be a little bit more tricky than it might appear to be at the onset. And I'm sure many of the participants on this webinar would probably identify with that. The approach that a lot of smart companies are taking is that, we want to do a little bit of unconstrained thinking when we talk about the total addressable market, particularly in light of a rapidly changing business environment that we live in. So we like to work with the leadership team, and many members of our audience probably do this already in saying, let's take a step back in an unconstrained way. Let's think about what our ideal accounts are going to be. Where have we seen success? Is there a trend? Is there something that we'd like to replicate? The answers astound me, and I learn each day from what practitioners tell us at Nexus. We've found that a lot of companies are now going beyond the firmographic methods of defining ideal accounts. It would be 10 years ago that we'd have clients come in and tell us, look, we'd like to go after 5 verticals, $1 billion and above in revenues, and that would be it. But now you got a much more nuanced, a much more sophisticated sort of view coming out, partly because the tools are available. So you might go with intent, you might go with tech installs, you might even say, I'm particularly interested only in dealing with people that have dealt with this subset of people before. Regardless, I think it's always helpful to have that unconstrained view and build a wish list. When you've done that, the next step is to then start sizing the universe of your total addressable market. And there's many ways to skin that cat, but let's just say that it's never going to be a precise number. A lot of our clients are comfortable with looking at ranges, and the ranges are also subject to the iterations, the kind of which you alluded to, March. But at the end of the day, what you want is a realistic, reasonable sizing of your universe, because remember, down the road, a lot of your resource deployment is going to ride on that number or that range. The next step, of course, is to build out the target account data set. We have an opportunity here to sort of go and build that incrementally. One can look at what has really worked for one before and then sort of use that as a template and expand. Or you could find that your product is finding particular traction in an unexpected industry or for an unknown use case, and you might try to replicate the kinds of accounts that might be able to give you similar levels of penetration. Mm-hmm. And so building a target account data set is the next step of the journey of getting your TAM sorted out. And lastly, and it's about account-based marketing, is oftentimes about what you decide to leave out, as well as what you decide to include. You want to really stay focused on those target accounts, because at the end of the day, you're going to maximize your chances of conversion when you look at those. And so deep mining or deep diving into an account, not treating it superficially, is very important to the journey as well. There's Marge, one chief marketing officer of a client organization that has been an inspiration to me over the years, Dave Hatch, his name. And he always tells me that, when he thinks about an ideal customer persona, he has this little formula, an acronym, and he uses the 1:1:2 acronym. And that's one decision maker for one influencer for two economic sponsors. And, not that there's only one way to define what your ICP ought to look like. Obviously, each of us has to decide that for ourselves, but it's always good to recognize that decisions of buying are now made by committee. And so who are the various stakeholders that you might encounter as you go through the decision by committee process? And let's make sure that we got, these personas covered so that we can avoid any unexpected surprises in the journey to close a deal.
Absolutely, Malap. More and more, yeah, I think I read a statistic a couple of weeks ago that on average there are 7 decision makers, and that's not even in an enterprise organization, that's in the small to mid-sized space. So you think if you're trying to, make inroads into an enterprise organization, that's going to even be more. Again, you have to have an advocate that's going to walk you into the CEO's office or the C-suite's office, and they're going to advocate for your product or service to be brought in. So you've got some homework to do to even get to the point where there's some visibility to those C-suite folks. CRM data, cleansing CRM data. So I'm just going to share right now, we're doing an integration with HubSpot and Salesforce, and there's about 15,000 contacts in Salesforce that are going to fly over into HubSpot this weekend when we make the integration. And we have not really a great idea of whether or not they've really been engaged. Now, we're going to have to start to market to them to filter them out. But you said something earlier, and I want to just cycle back around to it. Dirty data costs you a lot of money in a lot of ways, inefficiencies within your organization. But with a marketing automation tool, unlike a CRM tool, you are charged per contact in the system. So every time you're housing bad data in a marketing automation tool, it might be causing you 50 cents a contact, whatever it's costing you. And what if you have 10,000 of them? That's a lot of money every month to be paying for bad data. All the more reason you've got to be cleaning this data just from a cost perspective, because these are the types of things that you're going to be paying for. So Before we jump into talking about data, we're going to throw another poll question up here and ask you, are you really, folks on the phone, are you struggling with dirty data? And later on in the Q&A, I would love to hear what you're struggling with, because it's wide and varied, right? Yeah, and to your point, Malap, earlier, you said, 30% of the data is going bad every year. So if you don't look at your data for 3 years, you're down to nothing in your database.
In turbulent times.
Oh, yeah.
And Marge, we actually have a lot of research around this now. We know for a fact that Salesforce reports that a good 90% of the data. Oh, we have the polling results. I mean, let's allow you, Marge, to walk us through that before we go any further.
There you go. So we've got a wide and varied answer here. We've got about 46% saying yes, they are. 38 are working on it, 8 unsure, and we've got 1 person who says, nope, they've got good data. So hooray for you. Okay. So Malap, go ahead, give us a little more information on what you're
It's also interesting that 38% of the people are, and Marge, I find it interesting that 38% of people are working on getting the data. So it really is something that's out there. People are aware of it, and they're working to correct that. That's interesting to me.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, we have a situation where we know that a lot of the data is inconsistent. A lot of the lead data is redundant. Marge, you talked about the high cost of bad data just in terms of the licensing fees you might pay out in marketing automation terms. Then there is the cost of non-compliance. We live in times of data privacy. We live in times of regulation that increasingly requires us to comply with all sorts of personally identifiable information related norms. And the cost of non-compliance, we at Nexus believe, is going to exponentially rise over the next 3 to 5 years. And certainly the European Union and Canada have been trendsetters in this regard. The CCPA in the US, again, is a significant step forward in that direction. And you're going to find a lot more states and perhaps federal sort of take up those compliance requirements. And at the end of the day, the onus, the burden of compliance lies with each organization. Therefore, cleansing and maintaining compliant CRM data is increasingly something that organizations are going to give more and more attention to for the various reasons that Marge alluded to, as well as compliance. I think, we also live in times where progressive profiling is rampant. Lead data comes in from different sources. And because of the friction associated with many of these sources, marketers will choose to only partially capture information. As an organization, you're still going to have to, complete the circle and fill out all of that data. So CRM data comes with various challenges, pending those missing fields that might be missing. Standardizing job levels, functions, and specialties. Sometimes you may have ready-made data sets to scrub your data against and pick up the missing information. Sometimes you may have to resort to human research to get the job done. And again, you might want to enrich the lead profiles that you're working with so as to better target, so as to better message, so as to better achieve the goals of account-based marketing. So cleansing your CRM data then, I think, is step number 3 in that journey toward good data for great ABM outcomes.
And that it is. Oh, every once in a while, my slide doesn't want to advance here, Malap. There we go. So now we're going to be talking about, fine tuning it. So as I had mentioned earlier, we can put this all together. But for me, the real key is after we have our data cleansed and we are looking at what's happening and how people are responding to our marketing and our email campaigns or calls to action on our website or whatever, this is where the fun comes in, because we can really start to see what's going on. And, numbers don't lie. When we can look at a chart or a dashboard and it's showing us what's going on with that buyer's journey and those people that we're trying to attract, we can refine it. We can really make it better. one of the things this year that we've really focused on with our clients, and it's been really fun, is taking a look at the analytics that we're getting. And again, we're a HubSpot house, so I'm going to say HubSpot, but we're at the point now where we can see how leads are converting. So we know that, you know, if 100 leads come in, we get 2 leads out the bottom. We know what the conversion process is, and we can see how people are converting through their sales pipeline, which is magnificent. On the flip side, we can see how people are converting through their marketing. What's working, what's not working. Let's try an A/B test. But because we have the numbers, we can really analyze and fine tune. So again, we have the ability now to be capturing data, and even small organizations have the ability to afford softwares to help them capture and analyze what's going on. So when you're thinking about your account-based marketing, you've got to insert somebody in the mix who's going to enjoy analyzing the results, because I think that's really where we bring it home. That's where it all starts to begin to make sense for us.
Marge, I think you covered this slide really well. So I'm just going to add a few points, but the sum and substance of it is clearly that you need to stay on top and look at the data. There's this very great relationship we have with a direct marketing client of ours. And we've learned at Nexus a lot about fine-tuning and optimizing data from these folks. And one of the things, so just to give you an idea about the complexity of what they do, is they run literally hundreds of campaigns every year. And they're relying on hundreds of thousands, if not more than 1 million data records each year to get the job done. And we find that this is a multi-channel approach. They're using social media and email and direct mailers and phone calls. And when you're looking at those many channels and those many different campaigns and those many different products and messages, you do have to stay on top of what the response rates are. And, you know, some of the smartest professionals have figured out how to look out for things that are breaking down and how to fine tune. So we see professionals within this client organization going sideways and saying, look, this particular function isn't working from us. Let's try and build out some different keywords. They will find response rates dropping from channel A, and they'll say, well, you know, it's COVID times and a lot of people are working from home. Let's try home offices and send out direct mailers there. And lo and behold, they're getting fantastic responses from there. What we learn from sterling professionals like this is, you know, as long as you're willing to challenge your own self, so long as you're willing to kind of do what Einstein asks us to do, right? He says, you know, the definition of insanity is, you know, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, the antidote to that data poison is to find and fine-tune your data and make sure you're optimizing all the time. It's a continual process that pervades all marketing and sales strategy. And I think it's very central to success in these times. And Marge, I think, you know, that kind of rounds up some of the things that we think organizations and practitioners are doing to get data sorted out in their overall ABM journey.
Absolutely. And going back to the beginning, what we said was we have to be focused and targeted now. We cannot do that broad brush spray any longer. It does not work. It doesn't work with the number of messages that are coming to us daily. So we've got to be fine-tuned. This is not a, gee, maybe we should try this. Everybody's got to be dipping their toe in the water here. And I think the fact of the matter is there have been enough companies that have done it that there have been huge payoffs. That upfront investment in getting your data strategy right really percolates and sets the foundation for everything that is going forward. You know, clients are just focused on getting leads, and we have to help them understand what is the most efficient and effective way to go about it. And I know here at Acadia, the very first question we ask is, how's your data? And that is the foundation from which we start. We can't accomplish anything if we don't have the right target accounts and the right people within those accounts. But yeah, there is a huge payoff. And Malap, I think you have a story here that probably is going to show when account-based marketing is really put in place with good data, the payoffs are huge, correct?
That's right. That's right.
So we're going to step into this
and a story in figures.
Yeah, these are real figures here that Malap's going to go through with you, but you know, I'm just going to step back in and say from my perspective, it's always been about the leads. Again, people hire us to do things, but the things we do are ultimately to bring new business to the table. And that's what we always have to focus on. And I will always go back to, if we start with good data, the success rate is going to be much, much better. So Malap, I'm going to hand it off to you to kind of take us through this. This is a real life scenario. This is not made up numbers. This really happened.
This really did happen. And the vice president of Insight says that this specific enterprise organization had embarked upon this journey toward ABM success, and a great leader unified a lot of the different teams, made sure that they were doing all the right things. It was hard work. I can tell you that it's been a 2-year journey and counting. But I'm inspired. Everybody at Nexus is inspired by the phenomenal results that organizations are able to achieve with determination. And so, you know, the picture kind of paints 1,000 words, and to my mind, data makes it poetic. You got a 3x increase on average in qualified leads coming out of the same group of people. You have more than 55,000 highly researched leads being made available to hardworking sales folks. You got 50% increase in the coverage of accounts under the ABM strategy, something that, you know, obviously is a cornerstone of success as you want to expand the number of accounts that you penetrate into the market. If you could go to the next slide, I think some of the other numbers are equally compelling. There's a sort of peeking behind the curtains. What is it that's causing this deluge of leads to come through? And you can see that, you know, SDRs started seeing 2.5 times as many dials in a day, 5 times as many prospect conversations in a day. Individual BDRs were getting 5 times as many leads assigned to them, so they were not as constrained as they had previously been. The number of touch points on average per day went up 2x. It's, you know, the numbers tell the story across the board. And what's most satisfying, what's most gratifying is that when a strategy comes together, it's almost as though the entire organization is on song, and you can pick up any metric and you will see it trending in the right direction. So with that, really, and I know that Marge, you're going to sum this up for our audience here, but I do believe that this kind of success is immediately and directly accessible to all of us if we're able to just stay the course, if we're able to go down this journey of account-based marketing and make sure that we get our data right, make sure we do the basics right. And I'm sure we're all going to continue to enjoy that kind of success in the weeks and months and years ahead. So with that, I'll let you round up, Marge, for us how the figures actually translate into benefits for organizations.
And I don't want to skip over it, Malap. You said something that's really important. This was a journey for this organization. This is a journey for every organization. Stay the course. Don't give up. You know, it's like putting money in the stock market, right? You know, they say, you know, stay the course. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but in the long run, you're going to gain. I give you the same advice when it comes to this. You can't keep changing your mind. And kudos to the leadership within this organization that when it did get tough, they didn't abandon it. They said, nope, we believe this is going to work. We're going to keep doing this. And the results have just, you know, they're there. Numbers don't lie. So summary of just kind of recapping here what we talked about today and some of the benefits. Again, very, very important. It's keeping your sales and marketing folks aligned. You're able to deliver consistent customer experiences. You are streamlining the sales cycle. We want to make it easy for people to buy from us. We're also maximizing the relevance. You know, those who will come across as being knowledgeable and experts, those are the folks who are going to be chosen more often than not as the winning vendor. We're going to be able to measure return on investment and then continue to expand a business and account relationships. And I've seen this on a smaller scale. I can tell you at work, Malap, you've seen it on a larger scale. It's really, really critical to get your data right. So, you know, with that, what I'd like to do is open it up to some Q&A and hear from the audience. So, Bridget, I'm going to ask you if we have any questions in the panel for either Malap or I to address.
Yeah, we do. So,
okay.
first question we have, who should be on my team for account-based marketing? So this is referring to like sales, marketing, operations, who should be involved in these conversations?
Malap, do you want to take that for starters?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Uh, I think ABM has a lot to do with alignment between sales and marketing. And so you for sure want to pick up people at the top when it comes to sales and marketing, and want to make sure that as you go through this journey, everybody understands what their respective roles are, how we're going to dive into an account, who does what when, and how does one take advantage of the modern tools and technologies and data sources available to make sure that we stay in alignment. A lot of the organizations that have successfully implemented ABM are not shy of involving senior leadership across the board, certainly from sales and marketing. They're also not shy to have review meetings. We've been witness and party to many, many stormy discussions that take place as you rejig the organizational structure to make sure that the right folks are interacting with your prospects at the right time. And remember, there's the window of opportunity is small, and you can get it wrong if you're not responsive enough and if you're not responding with the right content. There is no time for misalignment, which certainly many organizations struggle with. So I would say sales and marketing leadership for sure, and then right from the top to the people who are making the calls, to the marketing analysts, to marketing operations, to administration, data operations, field marketing. Everybody needs to get into the game together. Everybody needs to know what their role is, what the predefined rules for handoff are, and at what stage do you kind of make that handoff. So for sure, sales, marketing need to be in lockstep to make ABM work. And that's what the entire project sponsorship and the alignment of teams needs to look like.
Absolutely, Malap. I concur wholeheartedly. To make it even, break it down simply, oftentimes what you really need to do is get with your sales and marketing folks, get them in a room and say, okay, we have a lead that comes in here, we turn them into a customer over here, and flow chart every point from A to B, how that happens and how that gets transferred. Marketing's doing something, information's transferred to sales, information is transferred maybe back to marketing. Flow chart, just a simple graph of what's going on, and all of a sudden you begin to get a clear picture of who needs to be in the know and who should be involved on your team, because that will start to really delineate it for you, make it easy to see.
Awesome, thank you both. The next question, how big should my target account list be? So that might be a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a biggie. Yeah. Again, that comes back to what your target, what's your, your total target audience look like. So Malap, I'm going to let you handle this one.
It's a tough short answer is, it's never big enough. Never big enough.
Never big enough.
Really, it depends on your philosophy. We have a lot of data research around this. We have thought leaders that come back with empirical numbers around this. Look, you're going to hear a lot of thought leaders and practitioners talk about the magic 250 to 400 accounts number in a B2B context. And that number really is about how many accounts you're going to assign per rep, whether you choose to call them an SDR, a sales development rep, or a business development rep, or what have you, and then multiply that by the number of reps that you have at hand. So we have organizations using that as one kind of a thumb rule as they go along this journey. There are various other factors that go into determining how large your target account list ought to be. Those could include things like, what kind of touch points are you indulging in? Are you the kind of shop that does a lot of emails? Are you putting in a lot more telephone calls, which would require certainly more nuanced data, better data, perhaps the ability to have direct dials and constraints around that could well determine how large your list could be. You could also factor in the sales cycle. If you are looking at a relatively small ticket size, then high velocity, high turnaround nature of sales requires you to have probably more accounts than might be required for a smaller, I beg your pardon, than might be required for a higher ticket size. And then there is the perennial enterprise versus medium versus small versus micro segmentation, which is to say, I'm selling into the Fortune 500 or the $1 billion plus enterprises vis-a-vis. I'm a cloud-based provider who sees my core audience coming in from small companies, 50, 60, 80 employee companies. That again will exponentially increase the size of the total addressable market. But the golden mantra to all of this, I think, comes back to what are you efficiently able to get through and iterate through within a manageable cycle of time. Could be a quarter, could be a month, whatever your planning cycles are. As long as you're staying on top of that, you have the ability to incrementally build and fine tune as you go along. My guiding principle, which we've learned from hundreds of campaigns through these years, is you can't and don't need to bite off more than you can chew. You can iterate and allow it to build out, incrementally, rather than putting all your eggs in one basket, only to find out that you need to make some changes, and therefore your target market accounts could change as well. So I would say it does make sense to build it out incrementally and then factor in all of these variables before deciding what might work best for your organization.
Well, beautifully stated. And manage it. That's the problem. Sometimes people say, I need 5,000 people in my account to do. Well, you can't manage 5,000 people. The other thing that's really critical with Malap saying, just let's start out and then be incremental about it. When you start out, you can start to measure your conversion rates, as I had mentioned earlier. So if you do iterate, you will begin to learn, maybe after 6 to 12 months, and you're tracking the measurements, for every 10 in my list, I get 1 deal. Then you're going to know exactly what you need to have in terms of the size of a list, because you'll chart those conversion rates and you'll know how many you need to be putting in to garner new sales on the out.
Very often, very, very beautifully said, Marge. And very often, just in conclusion with ABM, less is more.
Kind of one that tags onto that, what is an average number of contacts per account for account-based marketing to be successful?
I think we're going to get very quickly to the holy grail here, Marge. This is an audience that is asking
It's
very
a tough crowd.
questions. Would you like me to take a first stab at it?
Please do.
There we go. Again, there are rules of thumb, so there is no magical answer. There is no silver bullet. Earlier in this presentation, I alluded to one of the chief marketing officers swearing by a philosophy of 4 contacts per account, decision maker, influencers, and economic sponsors. We find again that depending on the ticket size of what you're trying to sell, multiple functions within the buyer organization might need to get involved. It does make sense to do 2 things as you go through this journey. It makes sense to try and figure out what departments and what levels within the organization might come into play and that you need to engage with, and use that as one parameter in determining how many contacts you build out. Another way to also think about all of this is there is a hierarchy, if you will. In next sales, we'll come to a shorthand around this. Our team likes to call it the gold, silver, bronze list. And the rule of thumb is, let's not try to build contacts per account. Let's just say, in a current large engagement we're doing, that magical number is 7, for good or bad. That's what it came out to. However, you kind of go about in a sequential way, If you can build those 7 out with gold, then you don't build any in silver. If you can't get to 7 with gold, you're going to make up the deficit with silver, and then so on into bronze. The idea is gold is going to be known personas that are known to convert and have converted successfully for the organization. Silver might be people who occasionally tend to kind of be the decision makers, but will often take you to the decision maker. And then the bronze might actually comprise generic titles, people that logic tells you might be the ones that might engage in the buy cycle, but you don't really have any surety around whether they will or not. And so you go to them, you're failing to meet quota, if you will, with gold and silver. Again, I'm seeing anywhere from 3 or 4 contacts per account, all the way to 30, 40, when you're talking about very complicated things like supply chain optimization, enterprise softwares, etc. Again, incremental and easy does it is a way to go. The better you know your customer, the better you're able to analyze who's converting well for you, the more informed your decision about how many you need to build out and what kind you need to build out. Again, you can iterate through this and build this incrementally. You don't have to get everything right in the first brush.
Right, right. And we do learn as we go through this. And I would say probably for the folks that we deal with in the small to medium-sized manufacturer, we're probably looking at about 3 to 4 contacts per company. But again, being able to analyze where we've had the most success, that really helps us understand who are those gold contacts we want to really be looking for. Yeah.
All right, looks like we have time for one more. So let me see. Okay, we have one. We have a long sales cycle. So how do we demonstrate success along the way? How do you show, I know a lot of times we have, especially salespeople, if you're using this marketing technique, might not, think it's working. So, how do you prove that it is as you're going?
Well, I'll jump in there quickly because I feel this is something near and dear to our heart, because we work with companies that do have a very long sales cycle. And that's that area where you want to continue to engage with them, even though they might have said to you, we're not going to be purchasing until Q3 of next year. But the fact of the matter is, there is still going to be a competitor who might be trying to unseat you and you don't even know it. They took the engineer out to lunch, or they've got him on the phone, whatever the heck is going on. It's very important for you to continue to personalize your messages to those people and keep them engaged. It might even be, you saw something in the Wall Street Journal that was pertinent to their organization. There are resources out there that are gathering manufacturing, and I'm speaking to the manufacturing world, manufacturing statistics about what's going on in the economy with manufacturing, what areas are trending up, things to be aware of. Anytime that you can reach out and continue to engage them and be able to say, I'm knowledgeable and I'm helping you. If you get an email back from them that says, hey, Marge, thanks so much for sending that to me, honestly, that's a success. And if you're tracking in a CRM or a marketing automation tool, you can track all those activities and you can begin to chart those activities and see, if I don't nurture, I get no reaction for 4 months. If I do nurture, I get 2 reactions every quarter, even if it's a, hey, thanks, or you saw that that person opened that email. Those are the very nuanced, I would say, activities that are going on while you are waiting for that long sales cycle. And you can measure those now so that you could go back if you have to give a report to your higher ups. We didn't nurture this dozen people, we nurtured this dozen people. And here are the 2 different statistics we got. And I guarantee you with the nurtured group, you're going to see more interaction and them staying connected to you. Malap, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'm mindful of the fact that we might be running out of time. So I'm going to add one small thing here. It's an intelligent question because it talks about the ultimate sale as a metric. Think about micro conversion steps along the way. And very often they will give you an idea about whether ABM is working for you or not. Those micro conversion steps in the funnel could be anything from converting into conversations, converting into demos, converting into a request for more information. You're going to want to see how the progression of that lead happens through the funnel. And oftentimes those metrics will give you early indicators, even though the sale may be a few weeks or months down the road.
Right. Oh, Malap, this has been so much fun. I think we're going to have to come back and do another one. And we will continue through this process of the ABM process, and we will be having another webinar on the other steps that we didn't touch upon today. But please reach out to Malap. I cannot say enough about Malap and Next Sales and the organization as a whole. The quality of their data, their ability to understand data, and to be able to help you cleanse and augment is phenomenal. So please, stay in touch with Malap if you have data questions, and you guys know where I am if you need to get a hold of me. And Malap, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really enjoyed this. It was a great topic. I think we could go on for another hour, but I think they're going to cut us off in a minute.
Thank you so much, Marge, for having me, and a great audience. Thanks, Bridget, for hosting this.
Thanks all, and you'll see an email from us shortly with the recording and the slides. And like they said, feel free to reach out if you have any further questions. Thanks.
Thanks all. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.